I think it's safe to say that most Batman fans who saw this thought, oh my god, Jason Todd. Even I thought this when I first saw it. Of course, right? Because that was part of the comics, that was in Under the Red Hood, that was in Arkham Knight, which came out a year before the movie, Batman v Superman, and a month before the Comic-Con trailer, which first showed this image. And this was a big part of the Dark Knight Returns story, so it makes sense if it was Jason Todd. But what if I told you it wasn't, but rather it was Dick Grayson? Well, don't get mad at me, it wasn't my decision, it was Zack Snyder's. This was the director's decision. This is how he wanted to tell his story. The plan was, of course, Batman was jaded, and the reason why he acted the way he was, where he was more aggressive, more bitter, a little bloodlusted too, was because the death of Robin at the hands of Joker and I guess Harley Quinn too. And it wasn't until Superman's sacrifice that gave Batman the hope that he lost in humanity. And the next Robin was going to be Carrie Kelly. But my question is, why Dick Grayson? I mean, it's not about comic accuracy, forget about that for a minute. Why specifically Dick Grayson? I guess in hindsight it makes more sense because if he only had Dick Grayson, because there's no Jason Todd, no Tim Drake, no Damian Wayne, no Stephanie Brown, no Cassandra Cain, not that one. Thank you. No Barbara Gordon, at least before and during the events of Batman v Superman. Because originally, Batgirl was going to be introduced in the canceled Ben Affleck Batman movie. It would be a bigger blow if that was his only kid and Dick Grayson died and he was a strong positive light in his life, but because that went away, not only did jaded Batman, it also jaded Alfred, and it just made everything worse. It soured his look on life even more because the death of his only child. No more partners. No more putting kids at risk. It started and ended with Dick Grayson. Because there's no Bat family, there's no one to give him that moral compass. Sorry, Alfred. I mean, Bruce never listens to him. You know he doesn't. And unfortunately, even though Alfred tries to tell him, hey man, you might be going too far, Superman's not our enemy, Batman argues with Alfred with why he thinks he's right. However, I feel like that's more limiting because I feel like there's more stories to tell if there was Dick Grayson. What if this had affected Dick Grayson too? Because the death of Jason Todd, maybe this made him retire as Nightwing. And maybe because of the formation of the Justice League, maybe that made him decide to become Nightwing again. It just feels so limiting because, like, what if another director wanted to tell a Nightwing story? Which now you can do, but what if the DCEU succeeded? What if that Justice League movie, the Zack Snyder Justice League, the true version, finally, what if that was in theaters instead and it was a massive hit? And now you would have continued with the DCEU stuff. There would have been no Nightwing movie, there would have been no expansion of the Bat family with the exception of Carrie Kelly, and eventually Barbara Gordon's Batgirl. There wouldn't be a Red Hood movie, or even a Teen Titans movie with Dick Grayson as the lead. And is the death of Dr. Fate permanent? Like, would we be able to give someone else the helmet? Or was that the end of Dr. Fate as a whole? Helmet and everything. You already did the death of Superman's story, which could have been its own movie, and the entirety of the Justice League trilogy was centered around Darkseid, which with that story, you're not going to have enough room to introduce a lot of Justice League members. Yeah, you can squeeze in a few in there, but still. Honestly, I really loved Zack Snyder's movies, but at the end of the day, if it's just so small and compacted, what was the point of having a cinematic universe? And I think in Ben Affleck's canceled Batman movie, the one that he was going to direct, he would have honored Zack Snyder's vision and would have kept Dick Grayson as the dead Robin. I mean, Ben Affleck has nothing but respect for Zack Snyder. He loves working with him, and he really loved what he was doing with the Batman character.
Zack told me he wanted to basically do the tone of the Dark Knight, Frank Miller series, where he's older and he's kind of broken down and more vulnerable, and I thought that was a really interesting approach to Batman. As a guy who feels a lot of psychological sort of torment, I thought was a really interesting approach. That was how, what we wanted to do.
But at the very least, it would have been really cool to have seen in a flashback the death of Robin at the hands of the Joker, or at least gotten some details about what had happened through exchange and dialogue.